Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander Knight's our reader for today. Alex, what's the first question?
First question is coming in this morning from the QR code. We have Logan Gibson in Gadsden, Alabama. Thoughts on NBC's new F-150-based SAT truck? Do we see more companies going to smaller form factor production vehicles?
Alex?
This isn't too new. We see a lot of these SAT trucks, these types of SAT trucks. So this is what you're talking about here. I think I can play it, and I'll hit play here. So this is like it's a dual cab. Probably have some of the production in the back. They have some of the services on the side. They put the dish in here. The dish folds up and will go back in to the truck. So I think it may just fold down and be on top of there as well. That's a common thing as well. It's not particularly new. We usually see these done with Suburbans. So Suburban is in my opinion a much better form factor than a truck. I'm not sure exactly what the thought process was here, because with a Suburban you get a lot more open area. We've seen these done on a wide variety of SUVs, but SUVs give you a little bit more space to work inside. But having these around works well. These are KU trucks, not C-band. C-band is bigger trucks. You can't put those on little cars. But these little KU trucks work. Now, as that dish gets smaller, the power that it can produce is also starts to go down. So these trucks tend to work well in fair weather, but if you get a lot of rain, they're going to not work as well.
John?
I have more of a question for Alex. Is the lack of vertical extension an issue? It seems like buildings and other stuff would end up getting in the way of where the crew may potentially want to be.
I mean, so a lot of times when you see a broadcast truck with a high vertical extender that you see there, those are microwave trucks, and those are looking for a part of a building. Usually, like in New York, there's like one building that has all the receivers, and you got to hit it, and you got to be able to see it. So they have these vertical extenders that allow them to go up. We rarely see those with KU trucks because those are because the satellite is pretty high up. You might be able to get over a little bit, but a lot of what you spend a lot of time with SAT trucks trying to figure out where the southern sky is. And we have a series of apps. A couple of us have different apps. The Android apps are actually probably a little bit better than the iPhone apps in this case, because a lot of truck operators use Androids, and so they just are more used. But you literally just point up at the sky and you'll see this thing of all the on a line are all the geostationary satellites, and you can if one's going behind a building or near a building, you got problems. So you have to kind of move around. But you'll see a lot of times you'll see a SAT operator doing a previs where they're walking around with their phone, looking up and trying to figure out where the satellites are in relationship to where they're standing. But the extender doesn't help as much there. It does help a lot when you're doing a microwave truck and trying to get it to a specific building.
Yeah, I misheard that. I really thought that the operator saw his satellite go behind the building and he was a SAT operator, but you actually said SAT operator, so it's fine.
He goes from a SAT operator to a SAT operator.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the one thing, this is just an Instagram post, so I haven't really read much on what the actual but they refer to it as a data truck. Is this different than a regular Ku-band transponder hitter?
I mean, it could be a
geostationary satellites.
You can do data on it. You can do data on a KU truck. If it's a data truck, it could also be a KA dish. So the KA dish is primarily used just for data, and so those are those. And so it looks like a lot.
Those are a new data truck. That's why.
Partway through the video, they say satellite IRT equipped 1.2 satellite IP system, Peplink cellular based router with Starlink antenna, runs on Ford's hybrid power system requiring no batteries or inverters.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think they say whether it's, and I can't look at it on the outside and know whether it's a KA or a KU, but it could be a KA truck. Now the problem with KA trucks is they practically fit. I mean, KA dishes, and I used to own a KA dish. They practically fail at fog. Like the wavelength is so small that if you get any kind of inclement weather, the KA isn't going to work. Yeah. It's not. It's so the KU. When you think about resiliency, you have the KA Then you have KU is a little bit bigger and a longer wavelength, and so it'll go through a little bit more. And then you have the C band, and that's a much longer wavelength, although they're trying to take it away from us to do 5G. So, that Ponzi scheme that we've heard about in the past. And so that they have but the C band is going to cut through almost anything. But most people don't invest in C bands except for very large events because they're really expensive and the trucks are huge. But when it rains really hard, you're really glad you had one.
If we're pixel peeping, it is a KU. They plug their Ethernet into a panel that says KU in the middle. But also, we know that they're really not risk averse, because the screenshot of the megahertz output display in the Mac, they're onto Tahoe, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, and you can convert any of these trucks. We had a situation where I had to we had to bring somebody in, give them bandwidth in northern Syria during some relatively complicated times, but it was for a conference in the United States, but we got the truck, we got the truck in Istanbul, and then we had to fly in a bandwidth up converter that would convert that regular video truck to something. So we brought that in from, I think, Germany or something like that. So and then we're able to make the connection. But then that connection itself was just a data connection. It wasn't a video connection.
Next question.
This one comes from the QR code. CJ Covell in Cincinnati, Ohio asks, would Amazon add or enable a higher frame rate stream just before game time? Watching football last night, and it seemed like halfway through the start of game animations, it kicked into high gear.
So, got the whole thing set up. I'm listening to the radio. I've got Amazon on for an hour before the game, and then right halfway through their little animation, it all of a sudden went from 30 to 60, and then remained that way for the rest of the game. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting.
I don't know for sure. It would be very unlikely for them to change what that, and it's not impossible. So the way you would do that is you have a player, the Amazon player, and the encoder for Amazon, which are typically, these are going to be big element. I mean, Amazon owns Elemental, so these are Elemental encoders and they'll have stacks of them to do a lot of different versions of these. What's interesting is specifically because of Windows, and so if you have an Apple device, you'll get one manifest for everybody. If you have anything other than an Apple device, there's like 400 other manifests that have to get built. They're called dynamic manifests, and they'll literally look at your device and decide what manifest your device needs, because Android and Windows is so fragmented, they have to build ones for everybody. So they build all of those, and that means they have a certain number of ladders, and some of those ladders are using a variety of different things. And a ladder is basically different configurations of the stream, and that ladder can be different configurations of the video, different configurations of the audio. There can be metadata, the captions, all the other things that may go along with it, and those are chunked up and sent out as HLS. Now, what happens is all of those are available in HLS, and your player is looking at your performance and the manifest all the time. So if you change the manifest, now in some cases the player will not, just stay on what it has because it's got a stream that works, but it may update at a certain time, right? So it may be built into the player to reload the manifest and see what do I have available to me now, and so you could change the manifest and suddenly it goes, oh, I see a 1080 60, or a 4K 60 or whatever that is, and go grab it, because what the player is doing is it's watching how fast the bits are coming in and deciding how far up the ladder it feels like it can safely climb. So when you see, almost always when you jump into a new show, it prioritizes instant replay because it's super important to give people video immediately, because otherwise they panic and they start hitting the button. And when millions of people hit the button at the same time, it actually destabilizes the entire system. And there have been instances where that's been a huge issue. So you have to be very careful of getting them video quickly. Like, they get video and it's moving. And then what you'll see is sometimes you'll see it really rough and everything else, and then you'll start to see it get sharper, and it starts to, sharpen up because it goes, oh, I think I can go here. Oh, I think I can go here. Now, sometimes if it's super fast, if you have a really fast connection, you'll see rough for 15 seconds or however long the player is set to play something to make the decision, and then you'll see it pop into whatever it thinks you can do. And you can see that happening if you open up Stats for Nerds in YouTube, you'll see these pulses in the Stats for Nerds, and that's anybody can do that. It's you right click on your, or you can click on your tools inside of YouTube, and even in the Apple TV thing, you can get Stats for Nerds. But you'll see this thing where it's showing you the bandwidth, and what you're going to see is a pulse and then nothing, and then a pulse and then nothing, because that's actually how how it's delivering that to you. It's not streaming to you; it's sending you the next 2 seconds, and then waiting, and then sending the next 2 seconds, and so that you'll see these kind of little pulses going on. If those pulses get too close together, then they drop you down the ladder to make sure that you keep on getting frames. It could have been something that it could be that the manifest changed. That's possible. Unlikely. You don't usually, with that many people watching, you wouldn't want to change it. That might have happened, on a big boxing thing when you saw a bunch of things go down actually rather than up. But I think that. But you might have seen, they could change the manifest to do that. They could force a reload, to a new manifest. But it also could be that it just doesn't update very often. It gets to a certain level and it checks in, and it might even, there could be something where the player says, check in again. Like it may have made a decision, but check in for the highest one right before the game starts. So to make sure that everyone, like we've got everybody going, have all the players now check in. That'd be really interesting. It'd be a smart thing to do there. Although it would suddenly add a lot more pressure to the edge all at one time. So it may have been doing that. It may have a whole, because Amazon owns the whole stack, they may be able to do things like cascade that out, and YouTube can do the same thing, is manage the bandwidth. So where it's slowly rolling out. Check for that higher one, going right before the game to make sure everyone's got the highest quality, but maybe not turn everybody on at the same time, so that the pressure on the edge. The issue is that when you have an origin, my pen isn't working today. When you have an origin and you have the edges light up as people ask for stuff, and so you need bits to be there. So you want to kind of, especially when you're dealing with the number of people watching Thursday Night Football, you want to warm the edge a little bit. And by the way, sorry about Thursday.
Yeah, it's a rough one. But they needed a gut check.
The video sure looks good.
I was going to say I will say Amazon's video picture quality is leaps and bounds the best football. And I have got the YouTube TV that comes in and it says 1080p 60 in the corner when you look at the stats. But Amazon's video consistently is much higher quality.
Well, there's two things about that. One is I don't like the player as much as YouTube's. Like the ability to move around and skip around and do the things that. So the player, I think, needs a lot more work. I do agree with the video quality is the highest, and the advantage of that is Amazon owning the entire stack. So YouTube is to some degree at the whim of all the broadcasters who are encoding into YouTube, where Amazon is controlling the trucks, the encode, they literally own the encoders, for it. And they, so everything is tuned in a way that YouTube doesn't have the luxury to do yet. So I think they're still, because of the way the licensing works, they're still getting feeds from, and everybody's got a good idea on what they want. But you'll see a wide range of quality on YouTube because of the fact that they don't control the encoders.
And if you're curious about what going up the ladder looks like, David Brady put a really great link in the chat to hlsjs.video-dev.org, which has a nice little thing where you can actually select different parts of the ladder and what does the streams look like and get a peek behind the curtain. Cool stuff. Next question.
This one is a QR code question from Donnie Y in Baltimore. I have been asked to help get a podcast started. I'm not sure what camera we will be using. My biggest issue is needing 3 microphones going at a time. Lavaliers only support 2 microphones on one input. Suggestions?
Ooh, the L word and not the good one. Alexander?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't understand enough about your whole chain because I don't know if you're using an external recorder to record this. I'm not sure if you're doing wired lavs or if you're doing wireless. If it's 3 people and you're using wireless, if you had to, that would be 3 discrete channels. So you'd have 3 receivers, 3 transmitters. I would not use lavs. I don't understand if that was a requirement and there's no way to convince them to try something else. But using external microphones like this, whether it's now I realize I'm using expensive condenser microphone, but I generally, when I recommend people start a podcast, I recommend a dynamic microphone, especially if the room isn't perfectly acoustically treated. So there are lots of end address dynamic microphones that are inexpensive these days. Again, I don't know what your budget is, but there's lots of options. So I would look at that style of microphone and put it into some kind of mixing console or field recorder where you can record discrete channels of audio. And again, starting on sort of the entry-level side, there's the Rodecaster Duo console under $1,000, or you can go to something higher end like one of those sound devices. Mix Pre's are also very good, and get one that has enough channels for each microphone. But that's what I would suggest. I'm not sure what you mean by you're trying to put 2 microphones in one input there.
Alex?
Yeah, you want a recorder, number one. Number 2 is you do want a good set of mics, and you got to decide: are you going to always do it in the same place, or are you going to be doing it wherever people want to do a podcast? And so, in how you manage those is can be very different. So, I mean, you can do. The lowest level of this would be to probably get something like 3 MV6s, plug them in. I think there's a mixing software and record software that you can get with. That Shure actually makes to work on all of those things for your laptop. That's not the way I would do it. I would use a Mix Pre 3 or Mix Pre 6. I would get 3 either MV7s or SM7Bs. They have a lot of off-axis rejection, and then plug them into that. And all of that will fit. You can get those with the mic stands, even large mic stands that hang out and go around into a little 1510 Pelican case. With a backpack, and you can go and do all your recording that way. So I would consider I would strongly consider doing something where you build a kit around a handful of mics. There are lots of different mics. I will say that I'm using an SM7B right now, and I find that it's an easy one if you don't want to try to figure things out. It's just most people are going to sound pretty good on it. The Mix Pre is going to make a lot of things go away. Obviously, Zoom has less expensive solutions that are going to be 3 or 6. If you have 3, if you're going to constantly have 3 people, my recommendation is to get a Mix Pre 6 or an F6 from Zoom, because you're going to always want a little headroom, 1 extra guest, 2 extra guests. You don't want to have to re-gear that down the road. So that I think that a good solid set of mics, and then what's going to happen is you're going to figure out a way to send out of it, and most cameras are going to have some way to go into them, and you're just typically we're just using that for sync. Like we just kind of plug that in so that we have audio in there. It's a scratch track in the camera, because we'll resync the local record back out. There are reasons to use lavs. Podcasts are not one of them. The lavs are fine for TV when you want it to look a certain way, but the culture of using real mics in the shot on YouTube for podcast is well established at this point. People are showing up on broadcast with their SM7Bs. They're not, so I don't think that I wouldn't back away from that unless people really have a strong opinion about it. And, and you should have them listen to themselves, because what happens is that no matter what, unless you're in a well-treated room, you hear a lot of the room. It's a physics problem. The lavs, as you pull the lavs away from you, you start hearing more and more of the environment, and it's really problematic. As someone who did all my first stuff on lavs and will only use them when pushed into a corner now, I would highly recommend real radio mics for podcasts. People have to listen to this.
And Eduardo Augustine gives us a little color to the production, and says he seems they're using a wireless Go or a Rode mic type of thing as their version of a lav. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that nobody's talking about cameras. And I think it's probably because the audio is the most important part of this, that 90% of your audience or greater are probably only going to listen to it. And if you're just starting off with a bunch of friends, bring what you have to the table, just record and practice, and then think about what do we actually want to do, what do we want to create, and then buy hardware that's going to help you create that. So if it's a bunch of people moving around and having fun and recording that as a podcast, the term podcast has come a long way. It's essentially any YouTube show is now a podcast because they'll release an audio-only version of it. But if it's just you and your friends sitting down, even a bunch of SM58s and like a Focusrite 4i4 is going to go a long way to recording that quality and then getting it to the point where you want to keep pushing and advancing. If people are liking the content you put out, then you keep enhancing and growing this product that you're creating because there's a demand and there's probably income coming from that demand. And then you can really invest and have fun.
Courtney?
Yeah, if it's a podcast, you didn't say whether it's, if you're at a table or what's your environment. I usually recommend the Zoom F6 because A, it has 6 inputs. B, in a situation where you've got 3 people with open microphones, you might want to have auto mix, and this has auto mix built into it. You don't have to pay extra for it. It can accommodate 6. It has pretty good, the F series has very good preamps in it, so they can handle the lower level dynamic microphones and get enough gain out of them. This also has a app which runs on an iPad or any iOS iPad Touch or iPod Touch or an iPad, so that you can control it remotely from the app. So all those are kind of handy to have. Plus, it's a recorder, and it allows you to record ISO of the 3 microphones or 4 microphones or 5 microphones. Plus, it can record a separate mix that is auto-mixed, and you can output that left-right stereo auto-mix out to your camera. And so your camera will have a auto-mixed combination of the 3 mics, whatever your camera is. If you end up with a DSLR or something just pointed as a 3-shot, that might work for you. And if you need to go back and do a radio podcast or something and clean it up, you still have the ISOs on the Zoom recorder. Zoom's a recorder, and it records 32-bit floats too. So if you get rambunctious and you get a little too loud, it can handle the dynamic range.
Guy?
Yeah, when people are getting started like this, it sounds like it's just getting lift off the ground. So you really have a couple options. One is you have the budget and you could do unlimited whatever, which in that case, just hire a sound guy and he'll come in with 20 years of experience and a 20 grand worth of gear with the proper sound devices and Sankins or whatever Sheps, and it's going to sound great. You don't say what environment, and other people have already discussed. It depends on if you're in a room or versus walk and talk or at a trade show. So there's all kinds of different mics. You get head-worn mics. I've seen podcasters that use these Audio Technica, broadcast style head-worn mics. So what are you looking at doing? Watch some YouTubers and see, is an SM7B something the client doesn't mind being in the shot, or do they want a discrete lavalier because they are going to do a walk and talk? And then, like others have said, the ISO recording is key because now you can bust out those isolated tracks. If you're down mixing the 2 lavaliers into 1 channel on a camera just because it has 2 channels, you're going to, excuse the term, hose yourself, and you'll be stuck in post with something that if somebody coughs while the other person's talking, it's baked in, and now you're stuck with it. So the other last thing I'll mention is Adobe Podcast is phenomenal. Even on a cheap mic like a Rode Go, you run it through the Adobe Podcast, maybe even run it through twice, and you will be shocked as to how good a cheap mic can sound. I was dumbfounded when we ran, Omar's in the chat, and he knows what I'm talking about. We ran some stuff through, and we were both just blown away. So give it a whirl.
Alex?
In the end, you just have to decide what's more valuable to you, money or time. If you buy cheaper stuff, you're going to save money. You're just going to spend a lot more time fiddling with it. If you get good equipment up front, it'll take you a little time to figure out how to use it all. But then after that, you're just going to have a lot better content to work with.
One more point on time. If you are able to, do it live to tape. Don't have yourself captured in a bunch of posts, because one of the things that can really slow something down is, okay, you've recorded everything, and now you have this time where, okay, I've got to edit it. But then something comes up, versus if you're able to finish the conversation with the energy and do a very, very, very truncated, small, short post workflow, now you're able to get that content keep flowing. We produce a show every single day, and there's no way we could do it if we had post. Alex?
Yeah, and the pattern that we use for the podcast when working with Michael Krasny's show is that we record it and we try to get it as close to done when we're recording as possible. We really try to tweak everything as good as well as we can. Then it goes immediately. It's immediately delivered on Frame.io to even though I said I was going to stop using it, I still use it because what else am I going to use? So anyway, so I gave up. I was going to stop using it, and then I couldn't find anything else. So we put it on Frame.io immediately. We have Michael and a producer listen to it, and they put notes into Frame.io. They just put the notes into that process. While they're doing that, someone will go through and just kind of get everything ready to go. Typically for us, it's Resolve is what we're using for most of the stuff at this point. And then when the notes come in, we go in and handle all of the notes that they have there. I automate all of the silences across however many people are coming in, how many tracks, and so if I'm doing it, I'll automate all the way through that and just bring out everything down where someone's not talking, just to reduce any of those things. The post process in that format for me, and again, I don't try to take out every tick. Like I have to admit that it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm getting paid to do it, a lot of money, then I take out every tick. If I'm doing it this way, I tend to just kind of bustle through it. But it'll take me about 2 hours, to post a 1 hour show.
Next question.
This one's from Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have an iPhone 17 Pro Max on the way. What are some production tips for using this iPhone for live streaming or recording? I'd like to use a similar mic to my current Shure MV88 with this new iPhone.
Alexander?
So some production tips for live streaming. Well, I would suggest getting a camera cage for your phone. And camera cage is very useful because it's got cord 20 threads. You can bolt all sorts of accessories. You may want to think about some of this type of stuff, which I will pull up right here now. There's the universal camera cage for mobile devices from SmallRig, very inexpensive. This is big enough that it leaves kind of an air gap around the phone, so it doesn't matter if you're buying a new iPhone, you don't have to worry about that case not fitting anymore. So it's got quarter 20 threads on the top, bottom, all the sides here. You may want to think about getting something like this. They make all these little accessories here that you can attach an external SSD to the camera cage as well if you need to record a local file of that there. And then, of course, you may want to think about some kind of USB-C breakout to give you additional ports so you can have things like permanent power plugged in and Condor Blue makes a really great USB-C dock, multiple USB-C 10 gig ports, full-size HDMI for monitoring. You could even take the HDMI out if you wanted and put that into a camera switcher if you wanted, using something like the Blackmagic camera app, which gives you a clean HDMI feed. So those are just some ideas of little things that you can do to sort of build up the rig, make it really a rig that you can actually use for live streaming or recording.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree. I like the larger. I have a couple of those larger small rig setups, and I like those because, again, I build the rig and design the rig around something that's going to be used from phone to phone to phone to phone, and I'm not putting one on. I started with ones right on the phone. In fact, that's how I ended up using small rig. But I kind of moved to the larger ones. It's much easier to rig things too as well. So I have a tendency to kind of go that direction there. The other one to look at is Beast Grip. If you look at the behind the scenes of a lot of the film productions that are happening in Apple keynotes and so on and so forth, you'll probably see Beast Grips, that are kind of incorporated into that. So take a look at those cases as well. Sure, I think actually makes a USB-C version of the MV88. So if you like that, you can do it. Rode also makes a couple that mount right onto the camera. I don't use them because I don't think I like to use higher quality mics. so I think that those are convenient mics to use, and if it's working for what you're doing, then I just keep using them. But I have a tendency to have the mics, off and then going into something else. Now, remember, any USB-C mic can go into the 17, so you can plug those in. And it'll see whatever's available there. So that is that's a big advantage to being able to add anything to it. I typically have a Mix Pre 3 attached to the rig then going into the camera, and then I plug whatever mics in I like.
Does anybody have the Blackmagic breakout box yet? Have we had hands on it?
It's still, there are some people that have them because there's videos that are showing up with them. So some people have them. Obviously, I'm bitter about the fact that I don't have them yet. But they, I don't know if that breakout is going to make a huge difference because for audio, because they didn't use professional connections to those things. So it's the Pro Dock is this kind of mixture of, it's in many ways the most advanced dock that anybody's built. It's got a lot of interesting, but they've made interesting decisions about things like it would be really great if we had micro mini XLRs, little TA3s would be great to have in there. We were kind of curious that we have a Pro Dock with time code and Genlock without SDI out, but we think that's because we would expect the Genlocked signal out of the camera, which probably wouldn't be possible. So we think that's the reason that's the case. But anyway, so I think that those are the things that it's a cool device. I need it because I need to sync up cameras. It's not the be all end all. I guess we'll wait for version 2 to see some advancements, hopefully.
Alexander.
Yeah, more on the audio front. So class-compliant audio interfaces can be plugged into the iPhone directly over USB-C and they'll work. So that gives you a lot more flexibility over what kind of microphone you can use. The MV88, it's okay. It's actually a very decent sounding stereo. You can actually run it in mono too. It's a very decent portable microphone if you're just like playing an acoustic guitar and you just want to record it, right? But there are other options like the Tascam Portacapture as well. And, if you get something that's this type of format, like a field recorder, you don't necessarily have to use the built-in stereo microphones, but you can actually plug in XLR jacks as well. It has XLR jacks. So you can plug in your own external microphones onto this thing. And because it's a field recorder, it'll have a quarter 20 thread on the bottom there, and they sound pretty good, those field recorders. And again, all the reason to get a camera cage because you can mount it straight to the cage.
John?
I don't think I heard it mentioned, but the MV88 will just work with this too, so you don't have to get a new microphone. You just may need a better cable, because I think that's a micro USB to USB-C that you would need for that, but that microphone should work.
If you're joining us on YouTube, we're happy you're here. Problem is, though, you're missing half the show. We're on every single morning, 7 a.m. Pacific in Makana, and that's your chance to ask questions while the show's going on. You can vote on other producers' questions so that we figure out what we should answer, and you can connect with some of the smartest, most engaged professionals in our community via the chat. So there's a lot more to office hours than just watching, so come on, be a part of it. Go to officehours.global/join. We'll see you live tomorrow. Next question.
This one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Elgato has a new prompter for $599 US with a free Camlink 4K compared to Camlink prompter for $244 on Amazon, 15-inch versus 9-inch display, which would work best for a Sony ZV-E10 Mark II and with a Sony Alpha 7 series.
John?
The camera doesn't matter. It really depends on your eyesight, how far away you want this device from you, depending on the focal length that you're using. And then is like, what's your purpose for it? Is it a extra monitor that you're going to stare into and use for other things? Or is it just to get eye contact for Zoom meetings? I'm looking at a 24-inch. Guess what? You can see my eyes move around. It's too close. I'm not, this isn't the best, but for this desk and how it needs to be used, this is what I'm using. I have the 9-inch version at home and it works well. For eye contact, I'll use it on the show, and I'll also just throw random things up when I'm not using it for a Zoom meeting. But it's not something if I need detail, if I need to pay attention to it, that's not a great monitor. And anytime you're dealing with the reflection of the glass, you're not getting a perfect image. There's going to be a hint and two differences, so you can't really use it for anything that you care about accuracy for. But a bigger monitor, is going to be nice. If you plan on just putting it over your monitor, you're really not going to be able to do that like you can with the 9-inch version. So it really comes down to how are you going to use this, Paul?
Guy?
Man, everything John just said is completely true. This is exactly what I was going to say, because I'm staring at you through a prompter. So I'm using it in this Zoom meeting. This is a people prompter. And I could look all the way in the corner of this monitor, all the way to the other side. So I'm wearing different glasses today, so you can see where my eyes go exactly. But then I line myself up in Zoom in my little box. So I'm looking directly at myself as I'm talking to you. So you'll notice if you watch Office Hours all the time, my eye contact's like dead on, because every show I'm moving the window around. So it's dead center. If I want to talk to Alex, I'll drag Alex into that window. And now I'm talking directly to him. And that's one of the big differences is if you're the question is 15 versus 9, what are you using it for? If 9's big enough to put Alex's head in that, then put Alex's head in a 9-inch. If you want him in a 15-inch, then get the 15-inch. The bummer about these two devices, though, is that they are USB-C. I wouldn't buy one of these things. I would get a proper one with HDMI input, because the day will come when you need that HDMI and you don't have it, and that thing's just meant for computers only. It's not going to do video. So, yeah, lots of good info there. And let's see what Courtney has to say, because he's got a little shiny metal object behind him.
If only we knew someone who knew things about teleprompters. I mean, that's the real challenge always.
Oh, wait, Courtney.
Well, this thing is my main criticism of it is it's a 16:9 or maybe even less. It's a widescreen monitor. And one thing you don't want with a teleprompter, since your object is to achieve eye contact with the camera, which is, as you see, centered there in the middle of the glass. The wider the monitor, the further your eyes can travel from the center of that lens. So, I prefer 4x3 monitors and real monitors that can take HDMI input, like Ike said, so that it keeps your gaze centered more in the center of the lens. This monitor is removable compared to the other one. The smaller one doesn't have a removable monitor. This one can be removed. The other criticism is the tripod support is on the bottom of a little plate that's at the bottom of the glass, so that you put a little outrigger support on the back that holds the camera. And so the camera is hanging off the back of this, and so your camera is several inches behind where the tripod center of gravity is. So it's going to be back heavy probably, unless that monitor is really heavy, depending upon the weight of your camera. And I think it only accommodates camera and lens length up to 8.2 inches. So if your camera and lens is deeper than 8.2 inches, it's not going to work on this particular device because of that little outrigger that sits on the back that holds the camera. So, it has a few design issues with it, and it's, like you say, a USB-C input that shows up as an additional video card, so an additional desktop on your computer. And you can only hit it. It only can be plugged into a computer and not just a HDMI input from, for example, a A10 Pro.
Alex?
Yeah, the advantage of having a 16:9 teleprompter for us is that if you're going to use it and you're going to have other things going on it, it's easier because you just see what you're seeing. For your computer, it's not squared out. But to Courtney's point, you see a lot more scanning. But for me, I agree with everybody else. Without an HDMI input, this is kind of dead in the water for me.
Now, I'm going to take a slightly different take on this, because I look at it in terms of not necessarily a production, but how could we use this as more of an integrator? Again, on the budget, I don't have the big budget to put in prompter people and have somebody at every building that has support. But if I'm going to build a teleconference room at 4 or 5 different physical locations, and I want to be able to support that remotely from a centralized IT perspective, I could install this into an office and then achieve what we've all done here with this Interatron style, where I'm looking at the folks that I'm talking to on Zoom, which has, by the way, I use the 9-inch prompter, and every single time it's great when I have one person on the other end. When I go into a gallery or someone goes into a screen share, I'm instantly like, oh, where's my other screen? I need another screen. 15 inches is what I'm looking at here. And I think that's a really nice size. But again, from a support perspective, if I'm trying to use this as part of a teleconference install that I need to be able to support remotely, now not having to worry about anything but that USB connection and being able to troubleshoot it from afar, that's a little bit of a win. Guy?
Yeah, it depends on what you're using it for, because a lot of people, they'll make the window smaller so that there's less of this, what's the proper term, Courtney, where the eyes scroll from left to right going across eye
travel or eye wander.
Eye travel or eye wander. So you got to be really aware of that, because it becomes a thing, like, oh, he's reading from a prompter. You could see mine. If I go too far, I mean, this is a monster monitor. So if I go too far, you saw it in my previous, well, I'll do it again. You can see that I'm looking all the way over there, and now it's like, who's guy talking to? He's not talking to me. So one of the things that I'll do is sometimes I'll do interviews right here. So I'll put somebody here, and then I'll jump in on another machine in the other room, and then I could interview them. And now they're way more natural because they're talking to me through the lens. They're looking at me through the lens. Instead, sometimes when you see these 60-minute style interviews, they're looking at the other person over here, and you don't get what we're used to now with this Zoom interaction. So many people are used to the direct eye contact. So again, it just depends on what you want to do. iCan is the other one. I know Alex bought a bunch of iCan prompters off me back in the day, so he's familiar with those inexpensive. Those are about the least expensive HDMI ones that you want to look at. And they have some SDI ones and NDI ones now that are like $5,000. So again, it just depends on your budget and what you want to do.
Hey, Guy, we were supposed to be under embargo for that new 32:9 prompter from Apple, the iWander. But anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Because we have Courtney here and we're talking about teleprompters, we had a question earlier in the week, Courtney, about people were seeing the letters going by. They were seeing a bright stripes where the prompter is in front of the camera, and they were asking what would cause that, to be able to actually see the prompter letters. They're not seeing them particularly, just seeing lighter areas as they go through it. And we thought it was related to exposure and how much, where the camera is. And, if the camera's opened up too much or gained up too much and it's not enough, it's competing. That might be the case. But I was like, we should ask Courtney the next time he's on.
Well, this can happen usually because of a poorly designed hood for the teleprompter. Because a lot of times that glass is at 45 degrees. And if you have something above that glass to block out the light, the image of the scrolling text goes through the glass and then ends up on that hood, which is reflected back into the lens. And so you can get these strange traveling areas of light that are actually a reflection of the top of the hood that's above the teleprompter. It's not refraction from the glass or anything else, because the monitor is below and pointing up, so it can't really get into the lens, but it can get into that hood, which is directly above it. And so that's a lot of times where and that hood is, because the glass is at 45 degrees, it reflects things that are above it back into the lens. So
John?
I said that does happen on the 9-inch prompter often. If you have it too bright, even with it, I mean, it's directly mounted. The way it is it mounts onto the lens of the camera, at least for the camera that I'm using it with. And so it's just leaking internally. So, I mean, you get what you pay for, right?
Well, one solution for that, by the way, is to move. If you have the lens, in this Elgato, the lens is at the back of the hood. So you can see it's the back. So the top of the hood is reflected in the glass. If you have a teleprompter where the lens can go in and almost touch the glass, and the hood, so the lens is kind of blocking itself from the reflection of the hood. Or if you put a small matte box on the lens and that is almost touching the glass, that can eliminate that upward refraction back into the lens.
You never know what seemingly innocuous question is going to hit the life experience wheelhouse on a panel, but you can get your questions in 24/7. You don't have to be in Makana. You can just go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and 24/7, no sign up, no login. Just go to askofficehours.global, put in your name, put in your question, and we'll get it in over the next couple shows. Next question.
This question comes in from Yeshua Bell in Antigua and Barbuda. I have an event to stream and need it to be blocked for viewing in a specific country. Is there a free and simple way to get this done? What options do I have?
Go ahead, John.
Free and simple? No, but Vimeo is an option. They have geo-blocking built into their platform. You can also do it with Zoom. So that's at least a cheap way to be able to do this. You could also do it if you wanted to. You could just do a unlisted stream to YouTube and put it on your website, and then put geo-blocking around your website and hope and pray nobody decides to right click and share that link to where you want it out. I don't know how important it is. If it's free, it's probably, if you're looking for free options, it's probably not that important to block it. But if you're looking at a surefire way to do that, at least from an IP, it's very easy to get around. There's VPNs all over that are free and simple that will, get around this really easily. But Vimeo and Zoom have great options that really make this easy.
I was trying to listen to the radio broadcast of the Cubs game the other night, and I'm in Cincinnati and didn't like it, so I had to put my VPN in Chicago so that I could then look at the manifest of all the streams that we're getting, so then I could copy the stream and then have it not geo blocked. So yeah, even the people that think that they're really really clever about this have a hard time. So that's a tricky one to solve. Next question.
This one is coming in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Have any of the panel members used Bitrig on creation of an app?
Alexander?
I have. I've only done one, and it is extremely bare bones, and I did it live on the show when we had, I forget his name, but I did it live on the show, and I made a broadcast-style atomic clock with extremely bare bones user settings. So I was pretty impressed so far. I just haven't spent any more time with it.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm working on a little sync app that I haven't gotten to a point where I'm using it yet, but I keep on fiddling with it, and it is amazing what I can do. I have to admit that I've been a little bit more interested in wanting to get it to do more complex things, which the problem is just trying to set that up in that environment. But I think I'm going to get my head around it. I think that's the big thing, is learning how to prompt it in a way that gets you what you're looking for. I do think it's a right now in its current iteration, it is a build a simple app that solves a problem for you, as opposed to building something that has a lot of architecture.
And that's really the fact that this tool exists and makes those little problem solvers more accessible to non-coders is, to me, the biggest impact of where we're at with either app creation tools or vibe coding tools. A lot of us have very niche specific problems that we can now learn how to solve ourselves, which is really cool. And I know we don't often like to look back, but if you want to look back at the office hours where Bitrig came in and Kyle joined us, what an incredible show. So much interest. We were supposed to go 15 minutes and went the whole show. It's great.
I do think that, if figuring out the process, and Bitrig is one thing that I'm playing with. I'm also in the process of getting like kind of Xcode tied in, and I've been using Xcode for a lot of things. I know that CJ's using a mix of Xcode and Python and other things like that. Vibe coding is going to be something you're going to see a lot of apps over the next couple of years being generated by vibe coding. And we can say, well, maybe they won't be as stable. I think eventually they're going to be more stable than what a lot of people write, especially smaller independent programmers, trying to keep up with some, there's an entirely different way of thinking when you have a larger group. But I think you are going to find that a lot of people are going to have ideas, and they're going to start creating those ideas and be able to do it. And I think that these architectures, it's definitely worth playing with, because it's going to be an opportunity for a lot of us to build tools. I know Jeremy Horn has sent me a couple that he's working on, these recorders and everything else, and it's amazing. Like, and he's just vibe coding those things, and he's using them in production. It's really cool.
Next question.
This question is coming in from the QR code. Roger Martin in Tonto Basin, Arizona, has a link to a Anker dual display docking station. Would like us to discuss it.
Courtney.
Well, it looks pretty cool. One thing I would criticize about it, it has, if you have something where you need a lot of USB-A outs and you've got a computer with only USB-C connector on it, and you want to plug something in and still charge your computer, it'll pass through 85 watts so that you can plug your power supply into the little PD input there, and it'll charge your laptop if you plug your the USB-C output of this into your laptop. And it gives you 2 HDMI outputs, which is great. So 2 extra monitors can be driven off of this one connection. Plus, you got a bunch of USB-A connections that are 3.1, so they're 10 gigabit per second. One thing that is missing, it doesn't have an Ethernet connection. I would like it to have a gigabit Ethernet at least, or maybe a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. That would be great.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm not, this is the thing you want to be careful of. If you have a PC, it probably would work pretty well. But if you have a Mac, make sure to look at this ultra clear displays here, and you'll see that you can copy this. I don't know why you would have all three monitors be the same, or you can copy it across these. But on a Mac, it's showing that it will not let you do ABC, so you could 3 different monitors. And so as soon as because at first I was like, $31, it's got to be a catch. That's the catch. so be careful of noting that this is going to give you.
So it only gives you one extension monitor, and the others
one monitor, and then some A's. I wouldn't. This wouldn't be the thing that I got. Yeah.
So for upgrade to the 8-in-1, you can get a VGA out, and then we're really cooking.
Well, I mean, you sometimes need
I got a lot of old VGA monitors that
I don't. It's having that's the kind of thing you put in your crikey kit, which is that you got some way to get from your computer to a VGA and a DVI, and you have DVI here. I'm going to go blast from the past. DVI-D versus DVI-I.
DVI-A.
Yeah, I don't remember DVI-A.
DVI-A was the analog. You could do DVI component. Yeah.
Yeah, the last time I had to hook into a VGA monitor, I think I took the USB-C to Thunderbolt, which was shaped like the original Thunderbolt, shaped like the mini DisplayPort, and then mini DisplayPort to the VGA. Like it was like the string of white Apple dongles trying to get me into this VGA monitor, and I was embarrassed. So it's fine. If you're enjoying Office Hours, there are some ways that you can help. If you go to officehours.global/donate, that's your way to contribute to the show financially. Also, of course, you can like and subscribe to YouTube. And we have a lot of volunteer opportunities, both during the show and all around the show. So not only live on air, but also folks keeping us organized. We have the committees. It's an amazing community. And of course, we have that officehours.global/donate. We're a nonprofit, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Next question.
This question is coming in from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. In the Blackmagic infrastructure, would you invest in a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K or a Sony FX30 camera?
Guy?
Yeah, if you're already in that infrastructure, and especially if you have legacy glass, EF mount or PL mount or whatever mount you had for your other Blackmagic stuff, I would stay in the Blackmagic world, especially if you're used to that codec Blackmagic RAW editing with DaVinci Resolve. So it's kind of like this end-to-end solution. The only time I would get an FX30 is if I needed fast autofocus, I needed something smaller, longer battery life, but things like shading with the ATEM, being able to trigger records. So being able to handle that color control from afar is something pretty unique that's in that ecosystem. So if you like that ecosystem, I would stay in that ecosystem, especially if you have the same camera already and you're getting multiples of the same. And then just audio as well. I would probably spend my money on a better audio chain. So I would get a sound devices or something that I can pipe in better audio before I'd go spending money on more expensive cameras.
John?
Yeah, I agree with Guy. If you're living inside the Blackmagic universe, then go ahead and invest into their cameras. Blackmagic RAW is great. Shooting anything really high quality on the Sony FX30s, the storage starts to become an issue. It gets very expensive very quickly. So take that into account. The one thing I would say the FX30s, which is nice, is you can do HDMI RAW out of and then into like an Atomos recorder, and then you get a lot more flexibility. You're stuck at 1080p when you're coming out of the Blackmagic cinema cameras.
Alex?
Yeah, if you have if you're recording internally and you're not going to have an external monitor, and you're going to do production, I would get the Blackmagic camera because you're going to be able to the internal recording quality of the smaller Sonys is not great. If you're going to have an external monitor, as John pointed out, you can now get something that's higher quality record out of the camera, 4K. Still not going to be quite the same resolution as the Blackmagic, but then look at the lenses that you already have, as Guy said, to do that. But the autofocus, like I'm using an FX30 for this. I use Blackmagic for the vast majority of the other things that I shoot because I don't need autofocus. Like I have a human focus that's usually managing that, but for my webcam, I really need autofocus.
Guy?
And don't forget that you could rent. I mean, Lens Rentals and other places have these cameras available, and they match the FX6, the FX9. So the shoot over the weekend, we used an FX30 as what we call the point of view camera, but then we had operators using FX6s, and then there was more control with the FX6s. So don't be afraid to just, use one for a gig. That way, if you really want to buy it, because that ecosystem of E-mount glass, the G Masters, can get very expensive very fast.
Next question.
This question comes in from McKenz Addis in Concord, North Carolina. I'm an audio engineer who's just getting into video and photography for fun. I currently own Sigma Primes, and I'm looking for an all-around budget-friendly zoom lens for my Sony A7R III camera. Any suggestions? Thanks.
Alexander?
This is one of those it depends questions, because it depends, like, what is the focal length required for the project? A very common, very usable, frequently go-to zoom lens would be something like, say, a 74 millimeter to 200 millimeter focal length. The other thing in terms of cost too, these lenses don't tend to be inexpensive. When you look at lenses that have a constant aperture, and what I mean by that is, let's say if the lens is rated at an f2.8 aperture, if it's a constant aperture, it means the more you go into that focal length, it can stay potentially at that f.28. So that would allow you to get a lot of light in. The cheaper lenses may be variable. So as you zoom in, that aperture is changing, and you're going to lose light very, very rapidly. So that's something to think about. When you get into these zoom lenses with f2.8 and even lower f2.0, you're going to get better bokeh, shallow depth of field, more light capture, and again, the cost is going to go up dramatically. If I had a Sony camera, I would try to stick with Sony glass, just because their autofocus is going to be the perfect match. But also, as a secondary choice, you did mention Sigma, and Sigma is an excellent camera lens manufacturer, and they have some excellent options. That would be my secondary choice for that camera.
John?
Yeah, I have the Sigma 70 to 200 and some Tamron 70 to 180s. And those are great glass. If you're pixel peeping, you're going to see some green tinting at the edges. And on a full frame sensor, I don't know that the Sigma 7200 is going to fill you all the way. You may have to be stuck into ASPC mode. But there's definitely a lot of good options that aren't as expensive as like the Sony FE. I'm sorry, the Sony, the main glass that they have, the GM glass. If you're going into the Sony lower line, I feel like the better value is with the Sigmas or the Tamrons. It just gives you more bang for your buck, but you can't beat the Sony GM glass.
Alex?
Our go-to all-around lens is 24 to 70. Like, it is just that's the number that seems to work for most of the things. After that, it's all specialty.
And if you're not spending G Master money, I have one of the 24 to 70 Sigmas that's got the constant aperture f2.8. I just shot with it the last 2 weekends on an FX30, and it produced some really, really pretty stuff. So worth a look. Next question.
Scott Tupper in Livermore, California, USA asks, has anyone used the service Popup Wi-Fi, a bonded cellular solution in a Pelican case for rent?
Alex?
I don't have the experience with that one. The one that I'm most familiar with working in events is called Castle Point. So this is their website, Castle Point Tech, or castlepoint.tech, and they do Wi-Fi. so it's probably bigger than what you need. But those are they provide Wi-Fi and potentially cellular as a service. So you don't really rent it as a box. You rent it as people and a crew. But they make those problems go away for pretty large events. So that's the one that I'm most familiar with. I haven't used the pop-up Wi-Fi. When they get small and they're just sending them out to you, our experience a couple of years ago was that we just couldn't find one that was reliable enough. They say they're reliable, but bonded cellular is a complicated thing. And so we found that it was either easier to build our own with a PepLink or to hire someone who's going to manage it.
John?
Yeah, for the cost, you really can buy a multicellular modem and then just kind of build out your own solution. You're talking, for like a decent sized unit, $1,100 a day. That gets quite expensive. If it's business critical, maybe it makes sense. But for us, we ended up just building our own solution and then deploying them around the campus for like outside events that we do.
I love having John on the panel because the answer always at some point ends up is, well, you can just build it. It's fine. Just do it yourself. Just start from the ground up.
I mean, it's not that hard. Like
if only
you get
we
a
had
multicellular modem that's built for that. I mean, you put an access point on it. It's,
if only we had people in the community that would be able to support you if you started building one. I think that would be the big challenge. Oh, wait, we do. So.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Again, to the panel, thank you for coming and bringing your life experience with you. We're all smarter because you're all here, so can't do it without you. Appreciate you very much. To our producers for asking such great questions. We had to send some back today, so if we sent your question back and you asked via the QR code, that'll get back into the show starting Monday. If you asked in Makana, they'll be in your notes, so next time you're watching, you can quickly throw it right back in. Also, to our back-end crew, you are the bedrock of what we do every single day. During the show, around the show, keeping us going, making us look and sound good. Thank you so much. If we would have had to do this in person today, that's the Tulalip Traversal, we would have went 15,000 miles. That's 23,000 kilometers, 116 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
And just like that.
Just like that. We're back.
Yeah. You know those little plates that you put on the, with the Blackmagic, little racks, the little rack plates.
Mm-hmm.
I now have a pallet of.
What, did you buy it from Amazon as returns or something?
My wife was calling. She's like, someone came with a pallet of boxes. I was like, it's for me. Anyway, I can't get into why, but it's funny.
It's just, it's always, you always feel good when you've ordered a whole pallet of anything. I had a friend who did that with Sharpies once, and he was like, I felt like a boss. I don't know why. It was markers.
I know. The guy just left. He didn't even take the pallet. I was like, oh. I was like, well, the shipping must have been pretty expensive. They're just going to leave the